Welcome into SEC Live here on the Voice of College Football. Andrew Miller, Jackson Johnson, Tucker Harlan here on a Wednesday evening. And we're back. We got a guest here on the channel. And this is going to be really stupid on my part because we were talking beforehand. I did not ask your last name pronunciation. Drew, is it Beatty or Beatty?
It's Beatty.
Beatty, okay. Drew Beatty of PaulKaharski.com, film analyst, covers the Titans. Iron City Film there on X, or Twitter as all of us still call it. He's joining the episode. He was on site in Mobile for the Senior Bowl and keeping track of all the action there, provided some great content out of that. And we wanted to talk about how the SEC performed. Obviously, the SEC is always going to have a lot of representatives down in Mobile with the talent coming out of the conference. And Drew did a great job keeping up with everything down there, so we wanted to get into all of that here tonight. For those of you tuning in, if you could leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and have the notifications turned on so you do know when we do go live, and for all the great content on the channel. And as Jackson always says, tell the friends, family, cashiers at Publix about what's happening here at SEC Live on the Voice of College Football. Get them to come and subscribe to the channel. Drew, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. Always a blast to come on here and talk some draft ball, talk some SEC football. Always a blast. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we're getting into that time of year where it's all about draft talk, and we've gone past the season, the championship, the transfer portal. Now it's obviously everybody's going to be gearing up for spring football very soon, but at the same time, now you start looking, okay, the guys who are leaving the conference, where are they going to be next year in the NFL? And as I mentioned earlier, always a ton of talent coming out of the SEC. It's no different this year, although maybe not the same at the top end of the draft as we've seen previous years. I know maybe there's not as many like true top 10 type picks out of the league, but still plenty of high level talents coming out of the league. And several of those guys were on display at the Senior Bowl. And we want to start off at the position that is most interesting most of the time anyway. The quarterback position, that's where everybody's focus tends to turn. And the SEC had 3 representatives there. We'll start with the guy who was the MVP, and that is Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU, a guy who had a very interesting season after putting a lot of promising stuff on tape in his junior year back in 2024. 2025 came in with really high expectations and didn't have the year he was hoping for. Now we've come to find out he was injured pretty significantly, and that hampered his playing quite a bit. Also can't really say much about some of the pieces around him in Baton Rouge and maybe some of the offensive system there. That didn't help him out quite at all. But by all accounts, Nussmeier shined in Mobile and really looked like the player a lot of people expect him to be. Drew, what did you see from Nussmeier down there?
Yeah, Nussmeier's been kind of a roller coaster for me because last draft cycle, I was about as high as you could be on Nussmeier. Like I was full first-round grade. I loved the 2024 tape. I thought he was outstanding. And then this year, obviously not what we wanted. I thought it was fine at the beginning of the year, and then that oblique very clearly hurt the velocity on his throws. It was just a completely different arm that you saw this year than you did last year, or in 24. I'm still considering 24 last year. Yeah, so the tape drop off to me, you just got to use context. You kind of almost have to throw it out because that oblique injury just hurts the quarterback so much in that rotation. But I went into Mobile hoping to see him kind of recovered from that, get to see the vintage Nussmeier that we saw in 24. And he disappointed me a little bit. I thought he was up and down throughout the week. I thought he finished stronger day 3, and then obviously the game. He MVP. He was really solid in the game. The ball placement issues still looked concerning to me throughout the week in practice. I wish that he could have been a little more consistent in that department. He's as small as you would expect in person. He's got one of the more worrying frames of any quarterback in this class to me. But really mentally is where Nussmeier's always shined. He's got the mental tools, the processing ability that you're looking for in an NFL quarterback. And that was, is clearly on display as it can be in Senior Bowl practices this week. I thought he was clearly the most mentally advanced quarterback out there. And I think when you see him get fully healthy and kind of remedy some of these velocity issues and placement issues, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go, day 2, potentially even early day 2 in a class like this.
Yeah, that was something I was wondering a little bit about with Nuss, is how high could he rise after Senior Bowl? And obviously we still have the combine to go. But the processing thing you talked about, that's so huge when, especially these days, so many of these college quarterbacks just don't have that coming out. It's all about the traits and the physical ability, because you can get away with it in the college game, and then you get to the NFL and it's tougher. That's definitely a big edge for Nussmeier in this draft. A couple other guys there at the Senior Bowl, and we have to talk about Diego Pavia because I know it's one of the more interesting case studies. I mean, obviously it went kind of viral when he checks in at 5'9" when he was listed at 6 foot on Vandy's website. That's quite funny. Look, a guy who was an outstanding college player, we know that. I don't know if anybody's really serious about him at the next level, but it sounds like he had kind of a mixed bag week. It was not the worst showing from him. What'd you see from Pavia?
Yeah, I mean, another guy I would label as up and down. I'm going to sound like a broken record on these quarterbacks because I don't think really anybody had a consistently great week. But I mean, Pavia popped a lot more to me than probably some other people because I came in expecting nothing. I mean, I really did not enjoy the tape at all. I didn't expect much from him as far as I thought he was going to be, fun college player. I didn't really expect much from him as far as an NFL quarterback goes. But he came out and the deep ball accuracy kind of shocked me in Mobile. I thought it was far better throughout the week than I expected from him. He had some really nice, dropping the bucket throws downfield on the sideline, outside the numbers. I think, you've got the same processing limitations that he's always had. He's got a guy that uses his legs as a bailout, and he's just too eager to hit that. Not somebody who wants to sit in the pocket and really work through progressions. That still pops up with him, and I'm sure the next guy we're going to talk about. Problem for both of them, but overall, I mean, again, ball placement was inconsistent, but the deep accuracy was probably the best thing for me with Pavia. Is that maybe it's just the fact that I came in with no expectations, but I thought he had some really nice downfield throws, and I think he's going to get drafted. It's going to be later, I would assume, but I think he had a good enough showing to put himself in the draftable group. Whether that's a quarterback or a team that has different plans for him, but I think that he certainly deserves a shot as a late round pick after that.
That's interesting for sure. I was wondering, is that a guy who could get drafted at this point? Because I don't think anybody would have guessed that going into this offseason. But look, good for him. If he makes that happen, even if it's not as a quarterback at the next level, which does seem unlikely, it'd be really interesting to watch. The last quarterback, and you talked about, you briefly alluded there with Taylon Green at Arkansas. Another interesting guy, has some physical tools to him, definitely has some high-level athleticism. Played in an offense for Bobby Petrino that doesn't always make life easy on QBs, does ask a little bit more of him. What did you see from Green?
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly points where I would have called Green the most impressive quarterback out there throughout the week. I think Nussmeier probably by the end of the week and by the game had edged him out a little bit, but I think that Green, I mean, the mental thing, he's still incredibly raw. It's going to be a multi-year project to get this guy up to speed mentally at the NFL level, and it might never happen. But the tools are incredibly rare. I mean, 6'6" came in. I didn't expect the 6'6" to be real under real measurement, but he came in, got verified at 6'6". The frame is massive. He's a long strider. Looks even faster in person than he did on tape, and that says a lot because he was pretty fast on tape. The arm is incredible. I thought he also had some really nice downfield throws. Biggest gripe with him, and it was all over his tape too, and all of those mobile, toolsy traits quarterbacks, they just use the legs as a crutch, and they want to run too soon when things don't click mentally. And the rate for how many times he scrambled in a practice was far too high. It was incredibly frustrating seeing. I mean, probably a good half of his dropbacks ended up being scrambles in a scrimmage situation, which I'm sure scouts don't love. But overall, I would say Green definitely helped his stock. He came out a lot better than he went in to Mobile. And I think the accuracy pleasantly surprised me, and the arm and athleticism is everything it's cracked up to be.
Well, and just kind of like looking at some of the mock drafts for 2026, I was looking at one from Matt Miller on ESPN, and he's not too high on Ty Simpson as he's got him in the second round. And some people have said he's going to be in the first round. Some people say he's going to be in the second round. What do you think, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone again up and down on Ty Simpson because if you'd asked me at the end of October, I would have said he was the best quarterback in this draft class definitively. And then the second half of the season, obviously the tape dropped off. He didn't play nearly as well. Some major ball placement issues popped up. I think an important part of that context that I had heard a lot at Senior Bowl was he had some nasty injuries he was playing through in the second half of the season, which, again, a lot like Nussmeier, that's important context when you evaluate these guys having a random drop-off in their tape. I would still say that Ty Simpson is the most mentally advanced quarterback in this draft. I think he's a better processor than even the Fernando Mendozas of the world. I've turned into a Simpson defender, which I didn't really mean to, but at this point, I think people have gotten so low on him that I still – in a quarterback class like this, I mean, Ty Simpson is one of the very few players who has a serviceable NFL arm and actually has NFL level processing and has the mental traits for it. So, I mean, I'd be shocked if by the end of this draft cycle, if Ty Simpson is not a first round pick, and I think that he's going to go a lot higher than people think. I wouldn't bat an eye if he goes back into the top 10 at this point.
And to be honest, I've been like really thinking about this idea. So we've been hearing a lot about the future of Matthew Stafford. We know he's going to be there for 2026, but after 2026 is a major question. So I've been like really thinking, what if the Rams decided to draft Ty Simpson, just have him sit for a year or just sit 2 years at the most? And then when Stafford makes that press conference or that announcement on X or on Instagram saying, I'm retiring, Ty Simpson takes over. Because, I mean, like the Rams had that really high draft pick from the Falcons after the Falcons traded that draft pick. Something I've been like kind of stewing, thinking about to be honest. But
yeah, I mean, that's been a popular fit. And I think people have been talking about the Rams potentially drafting Stafford's replacement for, upwards of 2 years now. And I think I wouldn't rule it out. I also wouldn't call it the most likely fit for Ty Simpson. I think that the Rams are just going to be more focused on adding talent to that roster than taking a contingency plan at quarterback. I think it's more likely that you see a trade for somebody more of a reclamation project for the Rams. But I think, like if he makes it to Pittsburgh, that's where I put him in my most recent mock was Pittsburgh Steelers. I think if he makes it to Pittsburgh, that's an incredibly likely fit. I don't know if the Dolphins are in a place to pull the trigger that early, but I think he'd be in contention for that Dolphins pick at the back end of the top 10. I think there's a plethora of teams, potentially the Jets in the mid-teens with their second pick in the first round. There's a lot of potential landing spots, I think, in the middle of the first round. I think that's going to be around where he settles. If I had to take a guess, way too early in the draft process.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Jets, I would kind of think about pulling a Boston Celtics type move where it's just like, it looks like you're helping your rival, but really you're not. Just kind of see if you got 1 or 2 stars, trade them over to the Dolphins, and then just kind of fleece the Dolphins out of their draft picks. I mean, that's what the Celtics did with the Nets in 2013, just fleeced them all of their draft picks. And it worked for the Boston Celtics then. Because, I mean, it got him a title. What if the Jets did something like that? Just kind of help out Ty Simpson in the long run.
Yep, for sure. I mean, it's certainly in the realm of possibility. But yeah, I mean, I just think generally people college football playoff recency bias has become a major thing in draft evaluation since it's become, a longer event like it has. So I think people are being far too hard on Simpson because of how bad the Indiana game was and how bad some of the game, like the Auburn game and the end of the season was. But like that first Oklahoma game, I mean, he looked the part of a top 10 pick at quarterback in that game. So I just think you evaluate his body of work as a whole, and people are far too low on Simpson right now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like you shouldn't get beat really horribly bad by Indiana. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like playing Indiana on ESPN Classic from 2005 to 2007.
So
right, yeah.
Obviously, Mendoza clearly number QB1, and you got Simpson QB2. I mean, do you see Nuss as the third right now, or is there somebody else jumping up?
Yeah, I mean, people have Trinidad Chambliss from Ole Miss in that range. I'm not a Chambliss guy. At this point, I didn't love the tape, and I think the fact that he's currently fighting the NCAA for another year at 23 years old is pretty telling of what feedback he's gotten from scouts. So Nuss is firmly in that 3 spot for me. But I mean, it's a long draft process. There's guys that could rise, but I don't foresee anybody taking over 3 from Nuss for me as of now.
Well, just kind of like thinking about Nuss for a moment. Because like his draft stock is obviously super low compared to like Mendoza, but if he's having a good day at the draft combine, not like on the field, yes, but off the field, does it kind of help him move up a little bit?
As far as like what Nussmeier's like off the field presence helping him move up draft boards?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think the fact that he was raised by, a legendary NFL coach, he has the name value. I mean, Nussmeier was kind of genetically engineered to be an NFL quarterback. So I think on the field and off the field, his brain, his personality is going to be super enticing to teams.
So, Drew, this is an opportunity for these guys to put themselves in front of NFL scouts and, of course, media, and really showcase their skills and showcase it to what the league has to offer and, up their draft stock. And from what we understand, a lot of people were able to do that this week, SEC prospects specifically. Who in the SEC would you say improved their stock the most down there this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of guys that I thought out of the SEC group that won. I could go on for an hour talking about those guys, but if I had to narrow it down to a few, I think Missouri receiver Kevin Coleman Jr. Might have taken the top spot as my favorite player of the whole Senior Bowl class this year. We were talking briefly before the show about Mississippi State wide receiver Brendan Thompson, and it being such a shame that he wasn't there. Kevin Coleman kind of took the place of what I thought Brendan Thompson was going to be in the Senior Bowl this year. I mean, he was comfortably the most athletic receiver that I saw out there. He was one of, if not the best separator of the whole receiver group. None of the DBs could keep up with him. Vertically, he was vertically separating from everybody. He was one of, if not the best deep threat down there. So I think for a guy that I didn't have on my radar coming into Mobile, he's firmly put himself in the draftable, probably even early to mid day 3 conversations as of now. And I think, when he runs a, low 4.3, potentially even 4.2s at the combine this year, it's going to be another huge boost to his draft stock. So he was certainly the player that impressed me the most compared to what I came into Mobile on them. Jeremiah Wright, the guard out of Auburn, is another player that I went into Mobile. One of my favorite players in the class, and I think he only improved his stock. Probably for my money, the strongest player in this whole draft class. Got verified at 340 pounds. I mean, he moved really well for a guy of his size. Had some really fun highlight pass pro reps. Nobody's ever going to win through his chest. He could firmly put himself in the early day 3 conversation at this point, I think. And third spot, I mean, there's a lot of guys he could go to. Grayson Holton, the defensive tackle out of Oklahoma, had a massive rise. He was one of the best nose tackles down there in Mobile. Really flashed against the run in some team periods. Offensive tackle Demetrius Crownover out of Texas A&M, in a weaker tackle group this year, was pretty comfortably one of the best. I mean, he shut down Romello Height out of Texas Tech, who was one of the bigger name players coming in, the edge rusher. Shut him down. So, I mean, Julian Neal, again, the last guy I'll mention, the Arkansas corner, was already, he's a top 20 player on my draft board going into Mobile. So I was already very high on him. And I thought that by the end of the week, he had really solidified himself in that conversation. Just probably the best press corner in this draft class for my money, or one of. And just a really fun group of SEC guys. And I think a lot of them really helped their stock this week or last week at this point.
You talked about Kevin Coleman. I can say, having watched him at Mississippi State, that is a guy that I think was one of the most complete receivers to have come through the program. Just in his 1 year at Starkville, being a guy that it felt like, and again, I'm speaking as a State fan, so many of the receivers we've had over the years, it's kind of, well, they can do one thing well, and that's kind of how you use them. I mean, that's a guy where you want to throw him a screen and have him take it to the house, he can do that. You want to have him take a quick hitch and turn it upfield. He ended up being a possession receiver a lot for MSU and worked the middle of the field really well. And but you talk about the deep threat stuff. I mean, he's a big-time talent. I think he's going to make an NFL franchise very happy when they get him. What about the other end of the spectrum? Guys who maybe didn't have the best week, came in with some higher expectations and just didn't play out well for them.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully there weren't very many guys that I thought really disappointed from the SEC, but if I had to pick 2 or 3, Georgia corner Dalen Everett was probably the biggest disappointment for me. He was a guy, that's been talked about for a while. He's got really, really fun athletic traits. Started the season off, I thought, pretty well, and kind of had started to get worrying towards the end of the year. And I think if I had to pick a corner that probably got beat the most or gave the receivers the most highlights this week, it was probably Everett. I mean, he got, beat down the sideline multiple times. He got beat at the catch point a lot. He got thrown around by bigger bodied receivers at the catch point. So overall, a pretty disappointing week for Everett. I still think he's going to test really well at the combine and still go pretty early on day 3. But yeah, he just did not quite get to my expectations for how he started the year off. And then another guy that a lot of people came in really high on, was Alabama edge rusher or D lineman, I guess, kind of tweener, LT Overton. Was a player that I loved watching him, his 2024 tape over the summer. And I thought he played pretty well again this year. And he came in and was kind of just like deafeningly quiet all week for what was generally a pretty big week for the defensive line. Being a weaker offensive line group, the defensive line really got to shine. And LT Overton, really, you didn't hear his name called at all throughout the week. He had obviously the highlight loss to Jeremiah Wright, the guy I mentioned earlier, when they had their kind of call-out period at the end of that second practice. So Overton, I mean, for a guy that really had one of the bigger names coming into Mobile and I thought had a strong 2025 to seal off his collegiate career, I was really hoping for a bigger week from him. Then a third guy that I feel a little bit disingenuous putting on here because I didn't really come into the week with any expectations on him. But Alabama tight end Josh Cuevas, I thought had a generally disappointing week because for a weaker tight end group, it was kind of anybody's spot to rise out of that group. You're coming in on the NFL is generally low on this tight end class, and it's anybody's spot to rise there. And I thought most of them impressed me. And they were all moved very well for their size. I thought everybody's measurements were pretty good, but Cuevas was the one guy that I really just didn't seem like he moved like an NFL player out there. And he, obviously nobody thinks Cuevas is the most athletic tight end in the world, but for a guy like him, you were just hoping to see some better movement skills. He looked really stiff out there this week. Didn't really do much in terms of receiving or blocking in the teams period. So he was a little bit disappointing. But again, overall, I thought there were far more winners than losers, and it was a pretty good week overall for the SEC.
So you recently put out a first-round mock draft over on your Twitter account, and in that, I think you had 12 players from the SEC going in the first round. 2 of those were on site in Mobile. Caleb Banks, defensive lineman out of Florida, and Colton Hood, the corner from Tennessee. What did you see from those 2 guys?
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly 2 of the most fun guys to talk about here. Colton Hood is somebody that I had gotten on pretty early in the draft process, and he has stayed one of my favorite players throughout this whole class. He's my corner 2 right now, actually behind Jermon McCoy, the 2 Tennessee corners taking the top spots. But Colton Hood is just like everything you'd want in a man coverage corner. I mean, he's got the frame, he's got the mentality, he plays well in press. I mean, he showed all of that this week. He had kind of a rough day 1 starting to settle in. He got beat on some stop routes, some comebacks in the one-on-one period, but you got into teams where they're playing real 11-on-11 football, and you could tell he really settled in. He had an awesome pass breakup. He was as physical against the run as you saw all year with him at Tennessee. And I mean, he got good enough feedback from scouts where he didn't even dress for the third practice or the game. So he got the week early just because he's locked himself in as a top 20, 25 pick at this point. And Caleb Banks, another guy who, I mean, I've been high on him since the summer. He came into the year as my defensive tackle 1, and he stayed my defensive tackle 1 in this draft class. Another guy who had kind of a rough first practice, really disappointed a lot of people, but he came in on day 2 and day 3 and annihilated this offensive line group. I mean, the talent gap could not have been more clear. His length and his athleticism and his power just dominated the guard group in Mobile this year. And he also firmly solidified himself as a first-round pick at this point. Obviously, there were some questions only playing 90-ish snaps this year because of the injuries. But, I mean, he picked up exactly where he left off in Mobile this year, and he was outstanding. They both firmly solidified themselves. Oh,
man, the potential lockdown corner duo that we never got to see
it
with Jermon McCoy and Colton Hood. And then they had another one in Ricky Gibson, too, and I guess he was penciled in over Colton Hood this season. But he ended up getting hurt. But, man, it's just a what could have been thing with those guys. But on the note of Tennessee, though, they were very well represented down there this week, and somewhat unexpectedly, just because you had a couple late arrivals. We talked a little bit about one with Star Thomas getting there very late. And then you mentioned to me that you got to watch a lot of Jalen McMurray this past week. That's another guy that was used in this Tennessee secondary. He was not a late arrival, but a guy that was a little bit more of a rotational piece. And, he had that clip floating around of him after the Music City Bowl of him saying, hey, I didn't want to skip out on my last opportunity to play college football. I didn't want my teammates to think that I was going to quit on me. So with all that said, what did you see from Jalen McMurray this weekend?
Yeah, McMurray, he was somebody that really wasn't on my radar going into Mobile, but I think clearly the scouts wanted to see him because I thought just pure volume of reps, he ended up with maybe the most, just most reps of anybody in the one-on-ones of any of the corners. And he, again, also started the week off pretty rough. Day 1 and day 2, I thought he kind of got thrown around, really gave the receivers some highlights. But day 3, I mean, it seemed like kind of a switch flipped with him. That's really what you're looking for in these guys is how do they respond getting around the NFL coaches and can they improve throughout the week. And McMurray, I mean, he got there on day 3 and he got to the line of scrimmage and his press coverage looked incredibly different than the first 2 days. I mean, he jammed pretty much every receiver he went up against at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he was putting holes in guys' chests at the line of scrimmage. He had a couple of really nice breakups. He looked better at the catch point. He looks like a fine NFL athlete, not somebody you're going to write home about, but I think he was certainly serviceable at the next level. So for a guy that had pretty low expectations coming in and had a rough start to the week, I thought he really progressed well over the week and overall helped his stock a good bit.
Yeah, one other name that I wanted to ask you about from Tennessee, and that is one of those late arrivals, is Tyree West. He was another guy that was used a bit rotationally on Tennessee's defense coming off the defensive end. And then he showed up later on in there because I know we talked about the Senior Bowl participants on the Tennessee show here on the network, but we did not mention him because we didn't know he was going to be there at that point. Mm-hmm. Did see where he had the early TFL. What else did you get to see from Tyree West this week?
Yeah, we unfortunately only got 1 day of practice with him being the third day. But Tyree West, he's been really interesting to me throughout this whole process because he's kind of the hardest player to pencil into an NFL role, being like a strange kind of frame at 6'1", 280-ish. You could play him at 5 tech like he did at Tennessee, or you put a little bit of weight on him, kick him inside to play full-time on the interior. But I was generally impressed with him as much as you can be. We're only having 1 day of practice. I thought he looked as powerful as he did at Tennessee. He was really good against the run. I think his best future is probably trying to tack on a little bit of weight and just playing as a pure interior guy, which I think is more where they played him in the one Senior Bowl practice and in the game. But yeah, I thought he certainly looked the part as a run defender and had 1 or 2 fun, power reps as a pass rusher in the one-on-ones. And yeah, I think he was, he popped enough for having, 1 day of practice.
We'll get you out of here on this. One of the players who was kind of surprising and was an interesting player coming out of the Senior Bowl was Oklahoma running back Jaden Ott, a guy who, when he began his career at Cal was a very impressive player. I know his last year there kind of dealt with injury, didn't have the best year, but there was all this hype going in to him at Oklahoma this past season, and he ran for 68 yards on the year. It just was not much of a factor. Goes to the Senior Bowl and kind of stood out. Was that one of the biggest surprises of the week? What did you see from Ott there?
Yeah, he was a guy that popped out of a generally weaker running back group. I thought, Arkansas running back Mike Washington, who I didn't mention earlier that I probably should have in my standouts, he was outstanding and has firmly put himself in potentially, second, third round conversation. But outside of him, Ott was probably the second guy I thought that popped the most. And I really enjoyed his Cal tape. I thought he was good at Cal, really athletic, kind of a track star at running back. And then he got to Oklahoma, and it was really puzzling. I never heard anything about injuries from him. Everybody I've talked to, nobody can figure out really just why he didn't get usage at Oklahoma. But he came to Mobile and finally got some opportunities. And he looked like the Jaden Ott that we saw at Cal. Certainly one of, if not the best athlete at the running back position in this class. And I think, when you give him the opportunities, he's got some really fun receiving upside. He had some solid vision. Obviously had the touchdown in the game on Saturday. I think that scouts are going to look at the most recent sample size of tape, which is going to be at Cal because Oklahoma just really never played him. And I think he is the same player that we saw at Cal. And I really could not tell you why he saw no usage at Oklahoma this week or this year, because he would have been the best running back on their roster for my money.
Well, Drew, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on here. Got anything you want to promote before you get out of here?
Yeah, just everything you guys got listed at the bottom of the screen there. You can find all my Titans and draft work at paulkuharski.com. The written stuff and everything else goes at Iron City Film on Twitter or X. That's pretty much where you can find everything I do.
All right. Thanks so much for taking the time. And again, everybody go check out Drew's work. If you're a Titans fan, definitely want to go check out what he's doing there for paulkuharski.com. And look, if you're just NFL draft coverage, Iron City Film on X does a great job over there. Drew, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thanks for joining us. And we're going to go to a little bit of a break here. When we come back, let's talk about Joey Aguilar versus the NCAA and his quest for another year of eligibility.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select a betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
There you go. And that's why you go to Mark Rogers, Steve Dace, Matt Zemek, Corey Bratta, and of course, for those under the radar picks of the week, Steve Merrill, especially when it gets to college football season. All right here on VOCFB Bets.
So big news today for the SEC, kind of the only major news within the SEC, but it's something we definitely want to get into. Tennessee quarterback Joey Aguilar was granted a temporary restraining order against the NCAA over his eligibility case. So Aguilar basically looking for his 8th year of college football is officially what we're looking at here. Has been a D1 player for the past 3 seasons, 2 years at App State, and then this past season at Tennessee. Started his career in the JUCO ranks, where I think it was 3 total years there, 1 year of not playing at all. But it's this quest for another year of eligibility. We obviously saw last year Diego Pavia and a lot of athletes challenge the idea that JUCO eligibility should not count against their time in the NCAA over the idea that you're hurting your earning potential at the next level, but if you're not giving them 4 full years at this level. Aguilar trying to return, and he obviously needs a decision to happen quick because you're running out of time to make the NFL draft happen if that's going to be a possibility for him, if that's where he has to go. But this is a big step towards him potentially being able to return as Tennessee's quarterback. We've talked a lot about the Tennessee QB situation and what that's going to shake out to be. This would obviously change things a lot if Aguilar was able to come back. Tucker, let's start Aguilar in his case. What do we know? What should be explained, and how likely is it that we see this going in his favor?
So there's a few things we need to know here. One, he was a part of the Diego Pavia case initially. He asked for dismissal from the case. He received dismissal, hired his own lawyer, and is now suing the NCAA in the Knox County Court in Knoxville. So that's one thing that you need to know with that. And he's the guy that is judging the case. He is a Tennessee alum from what we know, and a season ticket holder.
Well, Jackson will tell you that's very beneficial when it comes to getting other years of eligibility.
Yeah. So here's the deal with that. And I know this is a point of contention among Tennessee and Alabama fans right now, but let's make something very clear. While there are judges involved and attorneys who are, Tennessee alums, which, by the way, the NCAA's attorney in this case is a Tennessee law grad. So there is a little bit of a difference there. But here's the deal. Tennessee is trying to bring back Joey Aguilar for another season of eligibility. Joey Aguilar has not gone and played 4 seasons in the CFL. That's not how this works. Unlike Charles Bediako coming back from 2.5 seasons at the G League. I was at Charles Bediako's last game as a student at Tennessee when I was I think this is my junior year. That was because they were ranked number 1 at the time. Tennessee beat them 68-59. It was one of Bama's 2 SEC losses that year. And you know what? He went to the draft after that. We didn't hear from him for 2.5 years, and now he's back down. He wanted to lose to Tennessee again. What can I say? He came back down to college and immediately wanted to lose to Tennessee. But in some ways, it is similar, just because Bediako is doing it in the Tuscaloosa County Court, and the judge was, of course, an Alabama donor, 6-figure donor, from what we understand too. Tennessee does not disclose that information. So he might donate some money, but he might not donate some money. So pretty much innocent until proven guilty there, if that's the deal with the judge. So that's what you have going on there. The TRO, of course, has been implemented as well. And, I think a lot of this, again, it does relate to the Diego Pavia case, even though he's separated himself from the case and filed a lawsuit in the Knox County Court. But, you look at what ultimately ended up happening with Diego Pavia. He's granted that extra season, so he gets 4 seasons of FBS football, 2 at New Mexico State, 2 at Vanderbilt. And the one thing that I got out of that when it happened was play as much JUCO as you want. It won't count toward your eligibility at the Division I, FCS, Division II levels even, if you wanted to transfer up there while you're still in college. And here's the thing. I'm not a lawyer. I am by no means a lawyer. I did have to take some political science classes in college. I had to take a media law class in college. Guess what? There's this thing called case precedent. And if you said it, you got to abide by it with future cases. If we're not going to consider JUCO at all in any of this, in any of these legal proceedings and giving guys extra years of eligibility, then the same thing should apply to Joey Aguilar if that's the case. Because you got to think, too, like the 2020 season was canceled for him. So that's another part of the problem is like you've got guys who are upset about not being able to play a year of college football because of that. Now, it doesn't matter as much anymore, but in the JUCO ranks is a little bit different. Like, college football players and FBS and I guess everywhere except the Ivy League and D1, they were playing college football that season. So you did get your year for the most part. And most of the COVID seniors are gone by now, but yeah, it's an interesting case. And, it's part of a Pandora's box that was opened by this Diego Pavia thing. And I'm sure we'll talk more in a minute about, how the fans will be looking at this. I'll tell you who's probably feeling really good about himself today. That's Trinidad Chambliss, just based on this. Honestly, I think he might have better standing for some of this stuff than Joey does. I know he's not a JUCO prospect, but the guy, even though he's been in college football for 5 seasons, he didn't get to play for 2 of them, one of which was because of an injury, and the other one was because of a red shirt. So if you math it out, it's kind of the same thing.
Well, just kind of like thinking about the 2026 season, if Aguilar does play, they're way better than 11th, according to Brandon Marcello on CBS Sports. I mean, it's like that does not look like an 11th place team to me.
Well, let's get to the impact on Tennessee here in a sec, because I want to talk more about this. You mentioned Chambliss. Chambliss to me is a very different situation. That is solely a case of the year that he was sick/injured. And it was the tonsillitis thing. And I know, I think Tom Mars and the lawyers have said this was not a case of just simple tonsillitis, whatever. If he was ill to the point that he genuinely could not participate in football, then I have no issue with him getting another year of eligibility. Now, how they figure that out, we'll see. If it was a case of he didn't play just because they weren't going to play him that year, because look, sometimes you take a red shirt and you're still not ready to go. If he didn't play simply because they just were not ready to put him on the field, then I'm sorry, that just is what it is. We'll set that aside. If they can prove that for real though his issue did not let him be a part of the field, then by all means he's worthy another year. I think that's a separate one. This one is, it's almost entirely based off of, again, the precedent with the Pavia ruling, and I get it. I do. Like you said it once. Do you move forward with it? But I'm just going to be honest. At a certain point, someone's got to put their foot down and just say, like what is essentially being argued for these guys is they want college to be their career because they recognize that this is the one shot they have to make it big. Because look, Drew alluded to it with Trinidad Chambliss and his, NFL draft prospects. Don't you think if Trinidad Chambliss was a surefire top 3 quarterback off the board, he wouldn't be trying to get a 6th year of college football? Now, to be fair, I guess Dante Moore did come back too when he would have gone in the first round, but Moore is still a younger player. I can see the case of like really wanting the other year development.
Chambliss Jr. too. You have to remember that as well.
Yeah. Chambliss is who he is at this point as a player, a great college player. But that's the thing. He knows he's a great college player. He wants to make, and he knows I can probably make more playing college football this year than I can in the NFL. That's the case for Joey. I have no idea if Joey would be drafted or not. Where he, if he is, it would be a late day 3 type guy who's probably not going to be much of a role at the next level. Probably not much of a chance to play. I understand he would stand to make a lot of money being Tennessee's starting quarterback this season, although I guess there is a debate, would he be the starter? We'll get to that here in a sec. I think someone has to step in and say, like, I'm sorry, college is not your career. I'm sorry, like, I have no problem with the guys making the money. This is not me doing like an anti-NIL rev share thing. Profit off your likeness. And like, yeah, if you're a part of bringing in the money in the billions and billions of dollars that these guys do, they deserve a cut of that. I have no issue with that. But them saying, well, this is my one chance to make it big, so I deserve to get to do it as long as I possibly want to. Like, college is not your career. College is about preparing you for the next part of life, preparing you for the next part, the next level. And people could say, well, amateurism is dead and these guys are barely going to class anyway, whatever. As long as you are a part of the university as a student at the university, you have the time frame that you do to play. And I guess somebody would argue, well, look, what about the kids who spend X number of years in college beyond? But like, the eligibility window exists for a reason. And I don't think saying that, well, I was in JUCO, so that shouldn't count against me. I don't think that matters. Like, you were, that is your time frame of college. And, the argument is it's the JUCO argument. Well, I didn't have the earning potential. There are guys in D1 FBS that are not making money. There are guys at like the bottom of the FBS level who are not getting paid in college either. There are guys in FCS and D2 who are getting nothing. Like, why is it different for a JUCO versus a D2? And I'm sure the argument is, well, the JUCOs have zero earning potential. The other levels technically do have earning potential. At a certain point, again, I keep saying the same thing. Someone's got to step in. You cannot let guys continue to play for as long as they possibly want. I mean, I'm kind of at that point with the injury thing. Like, I think and I mentioned this with Chambliss, if you have a year where genuinely that prevents you from being able to participate, I'm fine giving that year back. Multiple years, there's some kid from Miami who's about to have his 8th year of college football because of multiple injuries. I'm sorry, dude. I get it sucks. At a certain point, you got to hang it up. Like, we can't have you staying in college football forever. And I'll be like, Mississippi State, Brennan Thompson, we talked about him earlier as a receiver. He tried to get another year to come back to state. And for him, there was really no case to be made. He had 4 years where he played more than 4 games as a college football player. But he tried to make – like, he was kind of banged up his second year, missed a few games. And then really the argument was that his first year at Tech, when he started his career at Texas, he should have redshirted, and they didn't. They barely used him. Okay, man. Well, that's happened. And, like, I love Brennan Thompson. And it would be great if Mississippi State had him back just because of an impact. There's a lot of guys that have years where they don't really see the field and they didn't redshirt throughout the history of college football. That's just a part of it. And I think guys have to understand you don't just you're not guaranteed 4 years of being a big time earner just because it's 4 years of college football. I know I've ranted here for a sec. It's just, and I have nothing personal against Joey Aguilar. And like, I'm not going to be hurt if he gets granted this next year and goes to Tennessee and has a big year, whatever. It's just, and again, I get the precedent thing. Someone has to like put a foot down in my mind.
Yeah. I don't think you're wrong about that by any means. I think, but because with the Pavia principle in mind, you kind of have to say yes to some of these people if that's what you're doing. And it's unfortunate. I really don't think it's good for the sport. I'm with you there on that, Andrew. I just think you're at a point where you've allowed it to happen too many times. You don't have the teeth of the NCAA to say, no, you can't have this. And because the NCAA, we don't know when it is going to die. It is dying a very slow death, though. Like, the only thing that it has left going for it are the major tournaments that it's in control of. Like, I guess the college football playoff is its own entity at this point. Like, the NCAA is not in complete control of that. That's athletics directors who are a part of that college football committee. Or college football playoff committee. So you're it's going to die a slow death. It's been dying a slow death. Until you get that governing body in place, I hate to say it, but I don't know if they're going to be able to do anything about this.
Yeah, I mean, the NCAA is basically in hospice care at this point. It's like, good grief.
You're not wrong. And I did have the thought. The only way you change this is that you have someone in charge that lays down a set of guidelines for all of this and says, this is how it is, and we agree to it. And that's going to continue to be a problem. Because, again, everything's been sued, and the whole – I don't blame Aguilar for trying. I get it. Like, you have a chance – he has a chance to make big money by coming back to college football that he would not get in the NFL, and there is precedent that says you can make this happen. I don't know if you can make any sort of argument that last year was just its own weird set of circumstances. And like, that's why the NCAA made it a temporary thing. But man, are we just going to say that every single guy who played JUCO who could have had another year? Okay, guys, come on back. Like, there does need to be some sort of structure, and you need someone in the courts, frankly, to be able to look at some of this and stuff and say, this is getting a bit ridiculous. And I get that's becoming harder and harder, and that's going to require have some sort of a governing body. But I don't know. You got to find a way to change it. You can't keep having guys coming back. I mean, Jackson, your thoughts on all of this, just from where you stand on the eligibility crisis in college sports right now?
Yeah, I'm kind of like, it was understandable to have it was more than understandable to have an extra year after COVID, right? If you dealt with COVID in the 2020 season, that was more than fair. But I think a lot of this, like, there are bits and pieces of it that started in 2010 when Casey Keenum got hurt. Does anybody remember that? Because it was the 2010 season. Casey Keenum gets hurt, I believe, I think it was week 2 against UTEP on a Friday night on September 10th of 2010. And Houston was like, okay, we got to get him to come back and fast because he's had his redshirt year. So maybe we can make a special case for him. And what happens? They make an appeal to the NCAA. And the NCAA just kind of goes, you know what? He didn't really play that much 2010 to begin with. So we'll give him an extra redshirt year starting in 2011. And we saw Houston have like an unbeaten season. Only loss was in the Conference USA title game. They won their ball game against the Penn State Nittany Lions in the OG Cotton Bowl Stadium, although there's a different name for that ball game, but that was another time for another day. But still, I think that's where it all really started, was with Casey Keenum. But then over time, you saw plenty of other teams using it to their advantage, where it's like, well, wait a minute. The NBA's not working out for me. Wait a minute. NFL's not working out for me. I want to go back to college. Like, that's a little...
Well, and the Bediako thing, that's a separate thing. And Jackson, or Tucker hit on it earlier. Like, he willingly forgave or whatever his eligibility by choosing to stay in the draft. And like, and I know the argument is now, well, what about players overseas? Like, I'm sorry, playing in the equivalent of an AAU league over in Serbia does not equate to going to the G League. It's like the rules have been different. We're not going down that rabbit hole, but like, this is all about earning potential. And that's why the courts are frankly siding with the players, as they don't want to put a cap on earning potential, especially when there is no sort of legislation over what guys can earn. Everything would be, I don't know any legalese whatsoever, but I know the term gets thrown around. It would be like an antitrust thing for the NCAA to continue to say that guys can only make X number of dollars, whatever. But someone has to be able to recognize that, like, you're not guaranteed 4 years at this level. Like, you're not guaranteed you get this. No, because your window to earn comes down to your ability on the field. And like, well, I had to go to JUCO ball. Okay, well, you're not ready for this level. You get the years of playing college athletics. That's what they have to go with. I don't know what's going to happen there. It's just it's a weird spot we're in. I guess to conclude the Joey Aguilar conversation, with a little bit more on Tennessee's side, what does Tennessee want here? Because I think the immediate assumption would be you want Joey Aguilar back. Like, he had a pretty big year for the Vols. I know it was kind of up and down against some of the better defenses, but not, turnovers became a bit of a problem in a couple of those games. But, I mean, he was a pretty good QB overall for the season, ran the offense well. I've seen some Tennessee fans saying they're ready for George McIntyre, though, and that they think that Tennessee's best option is to go with the younger guy and move forward. I mean, Tucker, what is the best case? And why might a Tennessee fan feel – why is it not automatic to just want Aguilar back, at least I guess for some?
Okay, so there's a couple reasons why I think Joey Aguilar is a guy that you want back. For one, I mean, the guy was one of the best – I guess he was the best passer in the SEC this year, statistically speaking. So you get that back in your offense. And another thing to keep in mind, and you're talking a little bit about the back half of the season, and we don't know when this developed. The man had a tumor underneath his throwing arm. He got it removed. I don't know when this happened. It's kind of odd that Ian Rappaport was the only one to discover this. Like, Tennessee kept this secret for a long time, pretty much up until right after the Music City Bowls when it was announced. So you think to yourself, man, what if this guy is completely healthy the entire season? What kind of performance do you get from Joey Aguilar in another year? And that's something I want to know the answer to. So definitely thinking about it like that. I mean, you get him back, your offense is automatically fantastic. And you, assuming the defense is every bit as good as what the portal acquisitions are advertising, then you're suddenly looking at a college football playoff contender in Tennessee. I have no hesitation in saying that, just because of how good this defense looks with all the acquisitions that they brought in and all the returning talent coming in on the offensive end as well. Now, as for fans who are not wanting Joey Aguilar back, I think they're echoing your sentiment, Andrew, just saying like, hey, this is not great. Go on and leave, Joey. Here's the thing. And
not to interrupt you, but I've seen a couple. It's not even so much about that. I think some are said, maybe they're talking about it from a GMAC perspective. Like, I saw one guy say, like, this is supposed to be, well, I guess this would be that side, that this is supposed to be GMAC's team. Like, if he comes back, he's winning that job. Or if GMAC can't win the job, a one goal, like if he can't win the job, that says a lot about GMAC and not in a good way. So I don't know.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying, and I kind of get what they're saying. GMAC, again, maybe it's a similar situation to, say, Garrett Nussmeier, where he's behind, I guess it was Max Johnson at first year at LSU. Then he's behind Jade Daniels for a couple seasons, and then he ends up taking the reins. Now, I think it would be less of a period for him to sit behind those guys. But here's the thing, though. If you're a Tennessee fan and you genuinely do not want Joey Aguilar to be your quarterback next season, and I interact with these people all the time on social media, I am amongst them, you are either A, stupid, or B, you are lying to yourself. You more than anything, these people want a national championship. And I'm telling you right now, if you can get Joey Aguilar back through this eligibility fight, you absolutely want to take him, because he can really elevate this team. Because here's the other reality with Tennessee during the Heupel era. Every team has more or less been a half team. The 21 and 22 seasons, the offenses were phenomenal. Defense, 21 was pretty bad. It got better in 22, but still wasn't good. I'm not going to pretend the defense was lighting the world on fire in 2023, but it was at least better. The offense was not phenomenal that season. 24, defense was at its best. Offense is at its very worst. This year, kind of like 2021, offense very, very good. Defense, not at all good. You know the defense is going to be good. So why not solve the mystery on one side of the ball already by getting Joey Aguilar back? And again, is it the right thing to do? And, for the grand scheme of college football, probably not. But you just have to think deep down about the desires as a fan if you are considering whether or not you want him or George to be your starter. I think just because of everything you've seen from Joey, the fact that he came in and just learned the playbook like that, you have to want him back. And other thing, this guy has cherished his time at Tennessee, unlike a certain quarterback that is now playing for UCLA. This guy embraced every second of his season last year. He loved getting the opportunity to play on a big stage at Tennessee. It was a much bigger stage than he was going to play at UCLA before the little trade happened. So, and I'd want another year of that too, honestly, if I got to play at that stage. So I think the answer is absolutely take Joey Aguilar if you can get him.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think more often than not in college football, having the veteran at QB, unless it's a guy who just actively is hurting your ability to win, having the veteran at QB is almost always the better option. Like, when you have a guy who knows the offense, because people so often want to just go with the guy who's they think has more flashy upside. And look, I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about George McIntyre in terms of his skill set because we just haven't seen him. But a lot of times fans want to go with the younger, more talented guy because of the upside. And look, unless the veteran is actively screwing things up, like having the guy who is understands the system, understands the offense, knows where to go with the football and not how to not make mistakes, which is something, sure, Aguilar has to cut down on a little bit. I get that argument. Having the steady hand, if you put the right pieces around him, tends to work out better than, well, we're going to have this really talented guy surrounded by this other talent, but he might make mistakes and not actually get those guys the ball that they need to. I think having the veteran QB is definitely the better option there. If you can get Joey Aguilar back for Tennessee, to me, you absolutely have to do it. We'll close out here. And Jackson, if you want to pull up the graphic from Dog Stats over on X. So this has been really cool. This is, again, Dog Stats, who's a Georgia guy over on Twitter, has been breaking down a lot of returning production stuff. Did some big stuff looking at offensive line snaps, was one of the big things that he had put out there previously. And he put out his overall returning production numbers. Basically, it's a combination of offensive line snaps, returning passing yards, returning rushing yards, defensive snaps, total tackles returning, and sort of combined all that for every team. This is something we want to get into in a future episode and sort of take a look at where all these teams rank across the SEC. But you'll notice, number one, the South Carolina Gamecocks. Over 10,000 offensive line snaps returning. Now, to be clear, it's not returning to the roster. This is based on every player on the team, what they have done to this point. So South Carolina lost like 8 linemen to the portal. They brought in like 9. And they brought in a ton of guys who have played a lot. You know, Jacarius Peak, sort of the most notable one out of NC State. They've got a lot back. I mean, Lenore Sellers at QB. The rushing production is pretty low, but they've got some guys coming in who've done more. Over 10,000 snaps returning on the defense. Over 560 tackles returning on the defense. I mean, they're kind of far and away number one in the country in terms of what they're returning this season. Feels like a team that maybe, I mean, could they jump up and surprise a little bit? What are some of the early thoughts on the Gamecocks as maybe a surprise team in the SEC with so much experience and production coming back on this roster?
Well, for me, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if they surprised everybody in the world of college football because, like, they've done it before. They'll likely do it again, I'm sure, because, like, you know, the preseason, chances are no one's really talking about South Carolina in a good light. That's usually a good sign for a Shane Beamer team right there. Because like last season, everybody was talking about how great South Carolina was. What happens? They have a losing season. 2024, nobody's talking about how good South Carolina is. What happens? They have a good season. 2023, everybody's talking about how they can be a dark horse. What happens? They fall short. 2022, they surprise everybody. That's something we always see from Shane Beamer teams. They're like a seesaw where it's just up, down, up, down, up, down. I think we could see something like that with the South Carolina Gamecocks again, especially seeing the overall returning product heading into the 2026 season. And the fact that you're mentioning 9 offensive linemen, that's a good shot for a really good 2026 season. I mean, it would not surprise me if they try and get a 9-win season and pull off a few upsets here and there.
Yeah. South Carolina returning all of those snaps, and particularly on the offensive line, what they brought in is impressive. Jacarius Peak, as we mentioned both just now and last week in our little transfer portal breakdown, is a quality add for them. I think it takes a second for some of these offensive lines to gel when they're portaling hard for guys, and that's something you have to wonder about this year. And to Jackson's point, you know how Shane Beamer is. When the pressure gets onto him a little bit at South Carolina, he seems to perform, but yet he gets complacent the next season and then falls apart. So I guess even years are their fun years at South Carolina. And I'm looking at their schedule now, and I mean, just the start of it, you've got these games against Mississippi State and Kentucky at home that I'm looking at that could be pretty winnable for them next year. Tennessee, I think it will depend on what time the game is. If it's a day game, and it hasn't been a day game down there since, I think, 2012. That was the game when Marcus Lattimore destroyed his leg. I do remember that now.
Yeah.
But that That's the last time they played a day game down there, and I'm sure the major TV networks would love to juice up that environment and make it work. And, of course, the last time Tennessee went down there at night, it did not end well. So have that in mind as well. But the road schedule, now that I'm looking at it, there's the potential to do some things on the road as well. You got Oklahoma and Alabama as ones that I consider tough. Florida and Arkansas, you just kind of have to wait and see how the new head coaches do. So it's interesting because, as we discussed last week, they put a lot of their eggs into the Lenora Sellers, Nick Harbor, and Dylan Stewart baskets. Now, how much they're bringing back on the defense outside of that's really quality in comparison to Dylan Stewart, I don't have as much of an idea. But again, South Carolina, they're just so strange every single year under Shane Beamer that they could do something. And I'd say it wouldn't surprise me if they wound up doing that just because of how bizarre they've been.
Well, and just like really thinking about South Carolina, Alabama for a moment, that's been a close game over the last 2 seasons. Like Alabama almost lost in 2024. But, it was pure luck for the Crimson Tide. And, last season, 2025, it took a game-winning drive to beat South Carolina. So I would not be surprised if Alabama, South Carolina is another one-possession game for the 2026 season.
Look, especially if they start off hot, and Alabama's going to be – Bama's got a lot of new faces. Like, Bama's got a lot of new pieces they're going to have to gel. What if they're not quite ready? I mean – looking at some of what South Carolina's brought in, like we've talked about it, yeah, it's Lenore Sellers and Nick Harbor, sort of the key pieces there on offense. But all the linemen coming in, we talked about Jacarius Speak a couple times, but you've got a ton of experience in playing time. A lot of guys coming up from the lower level, but I don't mind taking lower level players, guys who have just played a lot of college football. So if they can finally figure out the offensive line, they added Nitro Tuggle and Jaden Gibson at receiver. Tuggle was productive at Purdue last year. Gibson, it's been a couple years for him. He's dealt with some injury, and then he left OU last season. But back in 2023, he averaged like 25 yards a catch and had 5 touchdowns for the Sooners. Had a really productive year, playing, by the way, in essentially the same offense that you're going to be running now with Kendall Briles there as the OC. And, I mean, I think Sellers playing for Kendall Briles has a chance for – I know a lot of people are upset about what it might mean for his NFL development, because he's a guy that the scouts are very excited about his potential. But in terms of putting up numbers, like he's probably going to have his most productive year. Christian Clark coming in at running back from Texas had a huge bowl game against Michigan, and that's a good addition for them. This skill talent is probably the best it's been, I would say, around Lenoris in his time there. So if the offensive line is just okay, that offense could be good. And I mean, defensively, you talk about, Dylan Stewart coming back, but the D-line class coming in is impressive as well. They got Caleb Herring from Tennessee, a guy that showed a lot of flashes for the Vols, and I think could probably be a guy I wish Mississippi State had gone and gotten. There's a whole thing with State as to why that didn't happen.
Consistency is the big thing there, but he can be good. I can tell you that.
Sure. But that's a big pickup. They got the kid out of Illinois, Tamawa. I cannot pronounce that last name. Droje, 6'5", 300 interior player, very productive for the Illini this past season. So they brought in full talented defensive linemen. Their top linebackers are coming back, and Justin I cannot talk today. Justin O and Fred Johnson as their top backers. Have some guys to replace in the secondary for sure. With Brandon Cisse, DQ Smith, Jalen Kilgore, those guys moving on to the next level. So the secondary might be a little bit of a work in progress, but the front seven will probably be strong, and I'll take a strong front seven if the offense takes a step forward. This could be a good football team. Now, the schedule, you're right. You could look at this a number of different ways. Like, you could look at it in the positive light and say, like, hey, they could start 3-0, and then they could be 4. Even if you say a loss at Alabama, they could be 4-1. And, what does Florida look like? Getting Tennessee at home, could that be an upset? Arkansas, what is Georgia going to be? Like, there's a chance for some wins. The negative side is looking at it and saying, you're at Alabama, you have to go to the Swamp, and the Gators could be really good. Tennessee, what if they get Aguilar back and are good? I think Oklahoma's going to be good. Texas A&M, I'm not super high on, and you get them at home, but that's a team that's more talented. Georgia is going to be a national title contender. If Clemson, Chad Morris saves Clemson, shout out to Godfather, what's up? There's a world out there where they're probably only favored in like 4 or 5 games. As for all this hype, but they're not going to be favored in a lot of games. But they're not going to be massive underdogs, and they're going to have a chance. So, I think South Carolina could be a surprise team. Jackson hit on it earlier. It feels like a year South Carolina, everybody sort of doubts them, and that's when it breaks out. But the pieces could be in place for a really good season for the Gamecocks. Obviously, we'll get more into that as we go along further in the offseason. That's going to be kind of the plan moving forward, taking a look at more of these teams. What are some of our thoughts coming out of the portal window and moving into spring practices, which will be starting within a month for a lot of these programs, some of the expectations there. So a lot of that content coming your way. Obviously, we're going to get more into the NFL draft coverage. Again, thanks to Drew Beatty for taking his time today to join us. Did a great job talking about how the SEC performed at the Senior Bowl. So more of that draft content on the way as we get closer to the Combine and then the NFL draft. Jackson, Tucker, where can people check out your stuff? What do they need to check out?
Well, of course, they can find me on Jacksonville CFB on @/Twitter for more updates. What I've got going on Alabama with the Voice of College Football, SEC with the Voice of College Football, or the Jacksonian. And they can find me on Jackson Johnson 979. Well, on @/Twitter and on YouTube. They can find where I've got episode 97 and 98 of the Jackson, where I'll be filming Super Bowl 60 preview with Mike Debate from Patriots on SI. And on Friday, I'll be filming with the producer and lead writer of the field goals for the Seahawks site on SB Nation, Mookie Alexander, as we'll be talking about not only the Seattle Seahawks surprising season, but who could be their future owners, all right there. And it's going to be a wild ride seeing what's going to happen. And my bad, it's Jackson Johnson 543908 on Instagram and Threads. I really got to change that handle. But got some magic coming your way, all right there throughout the week.
Hey, shout out to Godfather, by the way. Super.
Thank you so much. Good
Thank you,
buddy.
Godfather. One of our greatest supporters by far in the chat.
By
He's
far.
amazing.
So you can find me at Tucker Harlan on X. I'm always on there talking about whatever the Vols are doing, most likely, or complaining about the Tennessee Titans, one of the two of those things. As for work-related things, I'm on CFBHQ on SI. We are constantly pumping out the trending college football news, whatever is big and trending. It's a lot of way too early storylines right now just from around the country. That we are compiling and putting out for you guys. So be sure and check that stuff out there on CFBHQ on SI. Vols Wire, as part of USA Today, we are getting a little bit more into the recruiting cycle. We're finally starting to see some developments there. Guys are starting to pencil in their visits for this summer, so that's pretty exciting. I'm sure spring football coverage will be here in the next month or so. Obviously, following the Tennessee basketball team a little bit last night. Well, not just last night, but into the season. They're doing well right now. They've won several games in a row. Had the pleasure of watching Chris Beard crash out with about 6 minutes to go in that game in Tennessee's 84-66
Be careful when Chris
win.
Beard gets angry.
Oh, very, very careful. And, we're going to have some baseball content right around the corner as well. Baseball season is, 8 days from now. We're getting really close.
Oh, a little bit before Valentine's Day. Nice.
Yeah, we're getting very close, and Tennessee is going into year one of the Josh Elander era. So we'll be exciting stuff there. We'll probably have some different statistics pieces, not recruiting, but prospect rankings for MLB teams, just with players from Tennessee in the past. And going into, I think, later on in the season as well, we'll have that stuff coming out as well. And then over on Tennessee, the Voice of College Football, we got Joey Aguilar, as we talked about tonight, fighting his case. That's something that we are continuing to monitor over there, trying to assemble some guests for the next coming the next few shows that we've got just between now and spring football. Of course, this is somewhat of an interesting time here in football season. You don't have any football going on whether that is spring or any games going on for that matter. So you're kind of just in this weird standstill, and people aren't really itching for football at the moment. So, but we'll be talking about everything you need to know over there on Tennessee at the Voice of College Football. Myself and Jordan Binkley.
And before we get to Andrew, I just want to let's congratulate Tucker on getting to 1,000 subs on Tennessee at the Voice of College Football as he and Jordan Binkley create all kinds of magic. Here's a round of applause all right here. There we go. Now let's get our boy over to 2,000, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. No, shout out to Tennessee, the Voice of College Football. That's awesome to get up there. Yeah, you can follow me at AleState 2020 over on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, the Bird app. It's still the Bird app, even if it's got that logo. I'm not a bot, even though there's plenty of bots going to show up in my mentions, I'm sure, just by me saying that. MaroonWhiteNation.com for some written content. I got some more portal stuff I want to get into over there. But also, Tucker talked about baseball. I'm going to be writing about baseball coming soon because Mississippi State fans need something positive to read about right now. And then, of course, Mississippi State at the Voice of College Football. You can find me over there as well. Appreciate everyone for tuning in this evening. Great stream, great conversation. Again, thanks to Drew. If you haven't already, please leave us a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel, have the notifications turned on so you do know when to go live. And we will see you all next time.
See you next time, everybody.